Thank you for staying with us on the conversation. Now, Africa is poised to benefit from artificial intelligence, better known as AI innovations, leading to African Union to launch a continental AI strategy which aims to harness the benefits of AI while minimizing its risks. Now, however, the adoption of AI in Africa also raises concerns about data bias, job displacements, and also the potential for AI to increase existing social inequalities. Now, to mitigate these risks, and also by doing so, Africa can ensure that AI is harnessed for the benefits of all its citizens rather than encouraging existing inequalities. Now, joining us to speak more on AI and what role it can play, or what role Africa can actually play when it comes to AI, we have three gentlemen. We have Otis Umude. He's the CEO, I-FEM International, and creator of Godspeed Hub from the US. We also have Derrick Edem Sosoo. He is Program Coordinator, Trust and Safety Africa Academy in Accra, Ghana. And we also have our studio guest with us, Adegbola Stephen, AI Solutions Architect and Business Efficiency Strategist. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so let me begin with Otis. Now, Otis, report actually has it that the African Union describes AI as a strategic asset pivotal to achieving the aspirations of, Agenda 2063 and also the Sustainable Development Goals, right? Now, can you tell us what are the steps that governments across Africa should take to ensure that AI development aligns with these ambitious targets?
I think one of the first things they need to do is start looking at each individual country, looking at their goal and where they stand. The IMF did a study on AI readiness and find out that the US, China, and Europe are about 65% ready. Nigeria right now is about 30% ready. So what each government needs to do is see where we stand, where we need to be, and start taking steps towards that. Part of that includes more training, more understanding, and letting the individuals know that AI is not taking your job, but it's going to actually help you do your job more efficient. So I think that's one of the first steps they need to do is look at assessing where they are and where they need to be and start making steps to get there.
All right, so let's hear from Derrick as well. Derrick, can you go ahead and tell us, the steps that governments across Africa, should take to ensure that AI development aligns with, the vision, the SDG goals and also Vision 2063?
So I think one of the key things most governments are trying to do is that they've come to understand that AI is part of us and it's relevant in various fields of work. So in some countries, you see that they are putting together committees to form policies around AI regulation in other countries. And then now more countries across Africa are interested in pushing STEM education in various schools. So when you go to some of the, even the junior high and the senior high school, they are pushing for STEM to be educated in some curriculum. So I think that is getting Africa ready for the adoption of AI in various fields.
Okay, let's hear from you, Adegbola. Now, what can Africa do, or what role does Africa have to play, to make AI pivotal when it comes to, everything technology?
Okay, once again, thanks for the opportunity. I do appreciate. Africa has, of all times in history, one of the most utmost of opportunities to really position itself in the world. The perception of African continent all the while has been as end consumers, basically, of things, innovations, and technological advancement, and then more or less a dump site, really. But then the unstructured data, right, which for the most part we are perceived to have, and the poor data management, more or less. Of all times in history, this is the best of times where unstructured data is actually usable, because AI makes that really possible. And so Africa has the might, It has one of the foremost, youngest, as a matter of fact, the youngest populous continent as per the youthful population. The talent and tying it to the public interest AI platform coming from the International Summit, that only forms a bedrock for the talent development part of the initiative, which was discussed. And so I do believe it's time to build the African intelligence, which I want to call it AI.
Okay, so but what challenges, is Africa likely to, come in contact with when it comes to developing AI?
Yes, actually, quite a number of them. I will talk about the top two, and that, first of all, will be the resources. Infrastructure-wise, Africa is a bit behind. It takes a lot of resources to build a proper state-of-the-art, AI technology, more or less, or product. And so Africa comes behind in that so many of the gadgets, the hardware, the infrastructure, first of all, because of the cost, we are really behind on that. More or less, the talent that we have would need so much of catch-up with what's going on out there. But there's still a lot of promise for Africa because we can do it if we are determined to.
All right, so funding is a major issue. Now, Otis, speaking of funding, we know that the United States has, already committed over $500 billion in AI investments, and also China is aggressively funding projects, like, the DeepSeek, yet Adegbola has actually said that funding is a major challenge. Now, how can Africa attract the capital and also support needed to truly compete in the AI space?
So when it comes to capital, I think in 2001, Google announced $1 billion investment in Africa digital transformation. And last year, they started dishing out some of that money. I think they gave 10 entrepreneurs in Nigeria funding. And the Minister of Digital Economy, I think our Minister Tunji, I think he might be in charge of tracking that. So what we need to do is track and see how much funding has come in, how have we been allocated, and what stage are we in. It's quite interesting, again, there's a private-public sector partnership. You can't only rely on just the government. You have to seek out individual philanthropists and see how much they are willing to fund and also track the progress. The one thing I think we lack is, Nigeria lack is actually having a research and development center where we are tracking what comes in, how much return on that investment has gone to, and what does it look like. Without any way to track that, it's really hard to know where we're going and if we're even going to get there. So we need to be accountable, able to track what we're using that funding for, and how much is it getting to those that actually really need it. We've come a long way. I think there is more room, but we need to really make sure that we are tracking those things to know how to allocate our funds as they're coming in.
Okay, now let's hear from Derrick as well. Speaking of funding, we also know that African startups, they often face a funding gap compared to their Western and Asian, peers. So what innovative financing models or even public-private partnerships could help bridge this investment disparity?
So I think when we talk about funding, one of the things the investors are also looking out for is infrastructure. I think with the right infrastructure in place, it makes it easy for investors to invest. With Africa, Africa has a unique challenge with even internet stability. It has to do with even data infrastructure, how to even store some of this data properly. And we have to mostly rely on foreign countries to store some of our data sets or to train our data sets. I think if you're looking at how to draw in right investments into our continent, we have to look at looking at even how the data is being handled over here. In Africa, we have a lot of unstructured data, which is creates a very large opportunity for us to look at going forward. So I think we have to make ourselves investment ready before we are able to draw in the right investments.
Okay. Now, you talked about funding, as a major issue, but then, according to reports, many innovators, are developing AI systems that actually run, on low-cost CPUs instead of the expensive, GPUs and all that's common elsewhere. So, has this resource-efficient approach spurred innovation despite, the challenges of limited infrastructure?
Yeah. So, and the example comes to mind, and that is a startup in Ghana that took advantage of CPUs. CPUs are the computer processing units, as against GPUs, which are graphical processing units, which really are the units used to power these big AI, infrastructures. So, and it was quite commendable what they could come up with. So bootstrapping, what we see, it's people, platforms, and certain clients, bootstrapping and taking advantage of the little resources, showing effort, showing so much commitment to do something, even using the little resources. And so that, even where to begin, more or less, the spirit to be a major contributing part of what's going on in the world right now. That spirit, if it's in us, we can even take advantage of what we have. We heard about the DeepSeek. We heard about how the U.S. export laws banned infrastructure movement from the U.S. over to China, as part of control that the U.S. seeks to gain over AI development. And yet, as we hear, we see how in the little resources available to the company, how a lot came through, to the extent to which OpenAI had to confess that and admit that they would learn some things from DeepSeek, with how much they were able to take advantage, optimal advantage of resources, comparatively really little. So I believe Africa can do this. I believe it's a time we can take advantage of the spirit in us, and then while we still expect the funding, begin things.
Start small.
And start small.
All right. Now, Derrick, you heard Adegbola talk about, some companies in Ghana who are already, using CPUs to cut costs and all that. What can you tell us about that?
So I think what they tend to do is with CPUs, you're able to, it requires minimal cost. And then if you're running some of your models on CPUs, that means they have to be like specific. You cannot run large models on these CPUs. And then I think that field is also growing. It's called Edge AI, where you are running low models on CPUs to perform specific tasks. And it's something that is also growing gradually. It used to be called Tiny ML, but now the name has changed and it's called Edge AI. And you can see a lot of that, a lot of developer hubs trying to build solutions on Edge AI and all that.
Okay. Now, Otis, this question I'm about to ask is quite an interesting one, because we've seen, even in Nigeria, we've seen a young man, in Borno State, come up with AI in his dialect, that's Kanuri, right? Now, since most existing AI models are trained on data sets, rooted in Western experiences, how crucial is it for Africa to develop models that understand our local dialects, and even proverbs, and also cultural nuances?
So there's something called a LLM, which is a large language model. This is a way that can help to translate. Again, because of how much data it takes, the advice is to start with something small. So LLM actually solves this problem right now. You just need to understand how the data set works, how to integrate that with your system. So the way LLM works is a type of artificial intelligence that actually trains itself with massive data text and understand and generate, human language to create, things like translation, text summary, and a few other question and answer, and also creative writing. So this is a model that can be used embedded in your solution that can help. Someone can speak in Yoruba and it can translate in Tweet or in English or in another language to someone else, and they can have a full conversation. What some individuals are actually even doing is when someone speaks, you're actually hearing it in your own dialect in real time. So LLM actually solve this problem for those who are interested in that kind of AI solution.
Yeah, so is that crucial? And, are there likely risks involved if we do not, develop such models?
So there are some risks involved, but again, there's always risk in anything. I look more of the advantage. When it comes to LLM, I think part of the challenge is because there's so many dialects in Africa, you have to sit down and train it very well to make sure it picks each dialect. And over time, it gets better. That is the one thing we've known with AI. It doesn't pick immediately. It's always understanding and learning. So the more we use it, the more it understands what we're trying to say. And in time, with more data sets, it can actually give accurate information. So time is on our side.
Okay, now let's hear from you, Adegbola. Now, some critics have actually argued that, African AI solutions are just repurposed external APIs, right? And, how do initiatives like the Zaidi Creator Lab and Snowly AI demonstrates that homegrown innovation can meet and even exceed, local needs?
I want to take a cue from what happened in China with the DeepSeek. Now, what this brilliant set of guys, as we are told, did was come up with a model with a fraction of the resources a bigger company like the OpenAI is needed to build somewhat such kind of a model. And so the DeepSeek was perceived to have had so much efficiency in the way the AI model was built by what it's called the distillation approach. So the distillation approach or the distillation strategy is where a parent model, which is established, good, and well functioning, is more or less piping into a child model, and the child model taking advantage of the parent model, right, to build up to as much as possible that capacity, more or less taking advantage of the training data set. Now, we may be seen to be more or less just end consumers and users of what's out there, maybe taking advantage of endpoint and all of that. But I really believe we really are in such times where we can really just take advantage of what's out there without really needing to reinvent the wheels. We can go beyond rather just consuming APIs, right, and the likes, to taking advantage of the open source model out there, for example, and then doing some of the strategies, taking advantage of some of the strategies to build those models, right, adapting them, training them with our own context, within our own context, with our own data, and building it up to that level where we can at least get to a point where they are relevant for our use. So that is what I believe we can do. The product release cycle is getting shorter and shorter. The time it took to get a large language model out, those days will be in months, probably years, but now in quarters and in weeks, we are seeing a proliferation of releases of these models. And that speaks to how it's easier to take advantage of the existing, models and resources to build ours that is completely, in our context. So yes, that's how I'll address that.
All right, let's hear if Derrick agrees with you on this. Derrick?
Yes, I can hear you.
Do you agree with what Adegbola said, on, initiatives like Zaidi Creator and also Snowly AI, using it to demonstrate that homegrown innovation can meet or even exceed, local needs?
Yes, I think, I totally agree, because once, there was a point in time where everyone was talking about ChatGPT now, but everyone is talking about DeepSeek. So it means that there is growth, and then we can find more innovative ways to make some of these AI tools or AI chatbots more efficient. So I think we as Africans have to find, in as much as we have limited resources, we should be able to find creative ways to make some of these locally developed solutions more efficient without being too reliant on some of these APIs and all that.
All right, now Otis, now speaking of, local, resources, making them more official and all that, so far, a few countries like Benin Republic, Egypt, Ghana, Mauritius, Rwanda, Senegal, and Tunisia, all in Africa, already have national AI programs, right? Now, do you think that there should be essential elements for an Africa-wide AI policy that both fosters innovation and also safeguards citizens?
So we can't look at Africa as a whole because we are each individual country, right? Looking at the continent, yes, but each country have to have its own roadmap of what they want to accomplish. So when you look at where we are going, policies needs to be in place. It's always good to have a policy, but there have to be a follow-up. I think, as I spoke, we all saw what happened yesterday with the meeting with Google CEO and our president, and which looked very promising. Right? What strategy do we have in place? I keep saying this. Looking at what the world is doing, taking those data isn't really going to help us. We have to sit and start as small as we can to start harnessing and building our own data. When you take the roadmap or the strategy of another country, it's good to take the framework, but you're taking what they already have in place, what does not benefit your own country. That's why I think when we look at Africa as a whole, each country have their own agenda, where they want to be and where they need to go. So the approach for me would be sit down and look and say, how do we shape this AI revolution? What do we need to do? There's so many benefits it offers, and I think we have to start looking that way as an individual with a framework. Obviously, African Union giving us a framework, but we have to look individually in this country of how we want to create our own roadmap.
All right. Now, I think right now we'll take a quick break. When we come back after the break, we'll continue with this discussion. Do stay with us. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on the conversation. Now, for those who are just joining us, we've been talking about, what role Africa needs to play to develop AI, and we've been speaking with Otis, Derrick, and Adegbola in the studio. Thank you for staying with us, gentlemen. Now, let me come back to you, Adegbola. Now, we talked about a few countries who have already developed their local AI, but then countries like Rwanda and Egypt are already pioneering AI-specific funds and also incubators, right? So what lessons can other African nations learn from, these early adopters to speed up their own AI development strategies?
I think it's clear that it's time to take advantage of partnership with more or less foreign partnerships. We heard about what Bosunti Jani did recently with in our partnership, Nigeria's partnership with Google, exposing some funds to startups and young minds in Nigeria to build things. So I think what Egypt and the likes of Egypt and Rwanda has done is something we can replay and even do better, because I mean we are self-perceived as Africa's giants. I think we should go extra mile in even being more aggressive at those strategic partnerships, take advantage of them, and move on from there.
All right, Derrick, over to you. Now, speaking of AI-specific funds and incubators, what lessons can other African countries learn from, these two countries that I've mentioned, Rwanda and Egypt?
So I think there's a whole lot of lessons to be learned. I think it's important for most African countries to adopt AI into various sectors, as we've now come to understand that AI is here to stay. Adopting it early is very important, because once you adopt it early and form policies around it, it helps prevent so many negatives. So I think, like in Ghana, I think the Minister for Communication and Digital Innovation was doing his vetting recently. He was asked about some questions on AI, and one of his answers was that he's looking at making Ghana the hub of AI in Africa. So a lot of countries are embracing it. Let's see what he has in store for the nation of Ghana. But a lot of countries are adopting AI policies and looking at building a roadmap around that.
Oh, okay. Now let's hear from Otis on this as well. Same question.
Yeah, I think what we've learned is, what we can learn is leveraging on the partnership that we have. We all know the challenge AI brings, the challenges that we are having that AI can solve. So I think what we need to do is look at a model and see, okay, what has worked for these other countries, what hasn't worked. And then from there, we can start creating our own framework. We know what AI can solve. It can help in the healthcare sector, in agriculture, in finance and governance. And we need to start putting policies in place to really help us drive this narrative. The earlier we get on board, because you have to train this model. It doesn't just pick up overnight. The earlier we start training them to fit into what we want, the better it is. So the output that it spits out later on for us will be great. So early adoption, strategic partnership with organizations, institutions around the world, will really help us be ahead of the game.
Okay. Now, still on you, Otis. Now, let's talk about capacity and also workforce when it comes to AI. Institutions like the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences, we know, have already graduated over 3,000 students in AI-related fields. How can our educational systems be further reformed, to build a workforce that's ready to drive the AI revolution?
I think when I was in the studio in November last year, I spoke about this. Early adoption, early training. We have to start integrating STEM training as early as primary school students. When we start early, they start to see what the future looks like for them. Giving them hands-on training in machine learning, artificial intelligence, coding, what big data look like, analytics, cybersecurity, how data comes in and go out. By having this, train them early, what that does is it expose them at an early age, and this can foster them to look at any field they're in, how to integrate technology and AI into that field. I mean, by doing this earlier on, it set the pace to have more trained, skilled individuals in the country to take on the world. So that's my take, early train, early adoption.
All right, Adegbola, I noticed, while I was asking Otis about building capacity and workforce, you nodded. Do you have anything extra to add to this?
Most definitely. It is just the way to go. If we want to put it on an order of priority, that should even come first. As a matter of fact, because when funding meets no capacity, no training, and nothing, it basically does nothing at the end of the day. And I have an 18-month-old who, whenever I look at him, I just look at a new generation, because I imagine when I was young and I when I have things to read, things to learn, I know how much I did to go learn them, do my homework and the likes. But then I look at this boy and I look at his generation. I look at the generation he will meet when he grows older and begins to do his schoolwork, and how differently things will be. And I engaged a particular chatbot, I think that was ChatGPT at some point, and asked, after Gen Z, what's the next generation? And as I was engaging the chatbot, I guess that was ChatGPT, suggested that it will be called Gen AI.
Gen AI, not Gen Alpha.
Yeah, it mentioned Gen Alpha and said there are speculations that it may be called Gen AI, because really, this is the generation which is being ushered into or born into an era that has been like never before. Yes, so just like Otis mentioned, I do agree that very early, we begin to expose them to how to take advantage of those technologies. When my son graduates from school, the labor market will be a lot different from what it is now. The kinds of jobs then would
have evolved.
Absolutely different. Exactly, it will have evolved, and to be something else we'll be talking about for them. So it's a shift, a really major shift in history, and it's such an interesting time to be alive, actually.
Absolutely. All right, Derrick. Now, we know that tech giants like Microsoft and Google, have and also are establishing research labs in Africa, in most countries in Africa. How can local startups and governments, leverage these partnerships to develop AI solutions that address our unique challenges?
You mentioned Microsoft and Google. So I'm in Ghana, and I think 2 years ago, I don't know if you know about ARM. They established about 6 labs in Ghana. So they established these labs in various in certain universities in Ghana. So what they are seeking to do is to start to develop the workforce right from school and equip them. So all these labs were equipped with various computers and microcontroller boards that they can use to build solutions and develop solutions that are centered around African challenges. So having some of these partnerships are very strategic in giving young people the necessary skills before they come out to the field of work.
Okay. All right. Now, Otis, let's move to a bit of health. Now, we already know that we're seeing, AI transform fields like healthcare and also education, right? Now, can you tell us that, could you share some examples of how, African AI solutions are addressing such challenges, such as diagnosing chest condition? And I did actually see a report of how, AI can actually diagnose cancer way ahead of time as well, and also delivering education in local languages.
Okay, so I think when we look at how AI is going to help, or how it's going to transform, is what we need to look at is imaging. Once a diagnosis is done, it look at historic data of a symptom, what its size look, and over time, how it becomes cancer, if in the early stage. So what this AI model is doing is taking historic data from maybe years ago, from stage 1, stage 2, all the way up, and it can detect early. So that's one of the advantage that this AI model is going to do. And it's already doing that, but again, it's not as accurate as it's supposed to be because of we don't have the large infrastructure to analyze those data in real time, the large data set. The other part we have to look at is telemedicine and remote care. Here in the US, we see a lot of individuals who are not mobile, can't really go to the hospital, and we see telemedicine becoming huge in the US. That would be really, really huge in Africa for people that are in remote areas that need care, that need monitoring over a period of time after they have gone through a treatment and don't have to physically be in the office every single day. Another part of healthcare we have to also look at is resource allocation. Predicting based on data trend, based on disease and a few traits, we can kind of model that in and kind of see how people are getting affected in different areas, in different seasons. This can also help with prevention. So there's a lot that's going on, and a lot can still be done. We just need more data sets to ingest into the system to help us understand and train it to exactly what we want to do so it can help us in the future.
All right, now speaking of systems, Adegbola, is it possible for AI systems, to sometimes unintentionally, reinforce biases or even harm human rights?
As a matter of fact, the first problem is data. Even before AI came into the scene, our data has been biased. For example, if you go to the internet and you ask about the history of, let's say, the African history, right? And you get that particular information from a Western perspective, there are high chances that what you read will be biased against or to the Western perspective of African history. So first of all is data. And this AI that we're talking about heavily depends on this data, which a priori was biased, or it's not entirely objective, right? The person from whom the data is coming, the data is as biased as its creator or whatever. And so then we came up with AI, and AI was trained with this same data.
Reinforced.
Exactly. And some developers of the AI models have gone ahead to even add more biases to the AI model, additional, right, to whatsoever bias it was originally created with. So we have a lot on our hands. And so because AI of its own has no thinking, has no direction.
So should we be scared about that? Because we're seeing, situations where AI is also being used, for misinformation and disinformation, and how, AI can just pick your face and then make you do whatever it wants you to do or whatever prompt it's told to do.
Yes, so I would side with Otis to say I want to be more positive. Literally every technology even that has come in history before now have positioned or posed some sort of threats. We can mention a couple of them. But then over time, governments and the likes, we try to wield the direction of that technology to the advantage of humanity, in short. So we should not be so scared as to not take and sap all the juice in that technology. In as much as we know that technology has, its potential negativities that can communicate. For example, because there are now open source models out there, a group of individuals took advantage of some of them and literally stripped the open source model of every censorship, right, called Ghost GPT, and then expose it for individuals to literally everything that is censored on other models, you could have access to it because they are now open source, and you can take an open source, work on it, and rework it to your own advantage. So this is really where, and it's good we are talking about where governance come in. I would really want more commitment, more involvement from our government as a nation, and even the African, leadership generally, to really put more regulations, go down deep into what really is happening, how we could guide the development of this interesting technology as much as possible to take it to our advantage.
All right. Now, Derrick, now speaking of, AI regulations, would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. And, I read somewhere in South Africa, impersonation fraud increased by 356%. That's between April 2022 and April 2023, partly due to AI misuse. So what safeguards do you think are necessary to prevent similar risks or even more across the continent?
So I think AI is a tool, and as a tool in the hands of the wrong people, you can use it for bad, and for in the hands of the right people, it can be used for good, as we are seeing in fields of medicine and all that, and health. AI is being used for good. So I think regulating AI, and then it's very important so that when people are using AI wrongly for misinformation and all that, and also for fraud, they know that there are consequences, and then they can't be let to go scot-free. That's why you see early adoption, and then when we formulate policies around this, it's earlier, it's better, it solves some of these issues coming up with people misusing AI wrongly.
Okay. All right. Now, Otis, let's hear from you. I know you want to say something about, AI misuse, using it for misinformation, disinformation, and fraud and all that. But also, speak to us about internet connectivity and power supply, which actually remains inconsistent in many parts of Africa, and also in Nigeria especially. Are there immediate measures that can be taken to strengthen our infrastructure support, or to support AI research and deployment?
Again, it comes down to funding, right? We have to be able to fund for this project, and this is where the government needs to come in. I'm going to fall back to regulation. One of the things I feel the government needs to do is have a way to, the same way we have antivirus system, the same way we have two-factor authenticator for the login system, the government needs to start thinking of how can we have something to safeguard misinformation of AI use. Sometimes you see how people want to do fraud. They will send an email. If you look clearly at that email address, maybe they add an extra I or an O or A that look like the real company, but it's not, to siphon money. But what some companies are doing now is when it comes to email, they have system in place that it will tell you this email is coming from external organization. It is not internal. I know for AI and different things is hard, but again, early adoption, putting those policies in place to detect when the information is wrong or it's not right or don't rely on the source. That is one of the things I feel the government can do. When it comes to data availability and quality, those cannot be said. We've said it time and time and time. Better infrastructure is needed for the internet, more reliable, more efficient, and more affordable. This is the way we can eventually get to large model data set analytics. So I think that's this falls heavily on the government to come in and help us to get to where we want to be when it comes to AI roadmap.
Right, Otis. All right, so let's have your final thoughts, Adegbola.
Okay, I really think it's time to build. It's time to build in Africa. It's time to build AI, and like I said earlier, African intelligence, right? That's AI, where Africa takes, the bull by the horn and, really change the narrative. The U.S. and America perceived to be the innovators. China's perceived to be those who scale the innovated work, and then the Europe perceived to be where regulations have happened, and Africa to be where consumption of all these technologies happen. That's been the narrative up till now. But we can create, by determination, a completely new narrative. The time has come for the youthful populace to really harness as much as possible all of the potentials within it, keep away from crimes. That brain is so good. If it's tailored to the right direction, it could do really great stuff. It's our time.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us on this particular topic. Otis Umude, CEO, I-FEM International, and creator of Godspeed Hub. We also had Derrick Edem Sosoo. He is program coordinator, Trust and Safety Africa Academy from Accra, Ghana, and then Adegbola Stephen with us in the studio, AI solutions architect, and also business efficiency strategist. We appreciate you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.